Well, thank you for having us, and thank you all for being here. It's a good turnout. We, of course, are bearing down on the 2015 session of General Assembly, convenes January the 14th. We are currently in the session that won't end, a special session that we've been in since way back. And my guess is we're going to stay in that until the last possible minute. One of the main reasons being that we have vacant judgeships on the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, and we are not in session, and the governor can appoint those judges. We don't want that to happen, so we're going to, I presume, stay in special session right up until we adjourn and convene a new session, and hopefully cut him off his knees from doing anything like that. You know, everybody reads the papers and watches the news and hears everything that's going on. And of course, we've been through a very, I think, a difficult time in the realm of ethics and ethical behavior. And it's not new. There's nothing new about it under the sun. But because of the unfortunate events surrounding Governor McDonald, now everybody wants to be pure. And so my guess is that we're going to have a lot of discussion, a lot of debate about ethics. There have been two commissions formed. One hasn't really done anything yet because they're not part of any budget. The other, the Governor's Commission, has made some recommendations. And I'll tell you, it's interesting to me. Two of the ringleaders of that commission are former electeds themselves who spent a long time in government, in the General Assembly, and one of them is Lieutenant Governor. And it's just, it feels a little bit disingenuous to me to have those people now telling us what we can and can't do and what we should and shouldn't do, when you know that they have been in the same circumstances. The time to make those changes, the time to improve the ethics and the ethical behavior is when you're there, when you're closest to it. That should be our job. And we realize that. And I think we're up to it as a legislature. But all this outside advice that we're getting now on how we should do things from people who have spent enough time there to have made reforms, but didn't. It's a little bit annoying, to be honest with you. Nevertheless, I think there'll be a lot of discussion about it. I think you will see some changes in the form of caps on gifts and giving and those kinds of things, and that's fine. It should be addressed, frankly. It'll never be stopped, and you'll never remove the corruption that goes with that sort of thing, because the people who want to try to influence you will find a way. If it's not this way, it'll be another way. Fortunately, and I'll say this, and Steve's been there a lot longer than I have, but I'll say this. It's very popular to beat up and beat down politicians these days, and to accuse them of things that is a perception more than anything else, not supported by any facts. I don't know of anybody in the House of Delegates that I can honestly say, on either side of the aisle, who would take a gift in order to cast a vote. Now, does that mean that you're not going to look differently at something if somebody's always applying you with gifts? Maybe. I don't know. For me, maybe everybody has their price, okay? Maybe I have a price, but I can tell you right now, it's not a dinner at Ruth Chris, and it's not a $200 check from some lobbyist. And I don't think anybody is going to sell out for those kinds of things. So we're going to address it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion. I think that's a good thing. It's healthy. Let's get it out and let everybody see what's going on. But let's let the legislature manage their own house, police themselves, because I think that's where it needs to be done. Of course, the budget will be central focus. I'm not going to say much about the budget. Steve is the vice chair of the Appropriations Committee. He's much closer to that than I am, thank God. It's not a good time to be very close to it, really. The budget is not, it's not an attractive picture. You know, it's unfortunate after a series of what folks called surpluses, which is really misleading. People are asking questions now, what happened to the money? We had 4 years of surpluses, and now we don't have enough to pay the bills. And the first thing you have to do, I think, is back up and see what those surpluses really were. They weren't piles of money that we squirreled away. They never were. And so that it wasn't extra money that we were able to call. And that's why we have a rainy day fund. And one of the things that's a little bit frightening about the budget to me right now is the fact that we've already dipped into that rainy day fund. And we're required by law, by statute, to put more money in it. It's going to be a big chunk of money that'll have to go back into the rainy day fund. And frankly, our revenues are flat. We talk a lot about Northern Virginia, and I'm one of the worst bashers because they drive me crazy. But the fact is, the bottom line fact is that they are an economic engine for the state. And when their economy slows down, so does everybody else's. And they're being heavily impacted by the sequestration cuts. And that's starting to show up in a big way. And we're looking down the barrel about less than a year away now from another round of those spending cuts about next October, I think. So at the retreats that were held this fall, at House Appropriations, House Finance, Senate Finance, I was able to go to those. And Steve was at the House events. And one of the interesting things that I heard was recessions are cyclical. We know that in the kind of economy we have. You have recessions. I mean, you're going to have them from time to time. They're somewhere between every 5 and 8 years. You're going to have some slowdowns in the economy. One of the problems now is we've never really come out of this last one, which was a deep recession for us. And we're about 5 years into that. So before we actually climb out, we're looking at the possibility of another one. And that's, I don't think we've ever been there before. Not in my lifetime can I recall us ever being on that thin ice with the budget. So there are a lot of things that can happen. Hopefully some good things will happen. I think it's going to have to be cautious. I think we will have a new kind of economy in Virginia, particularly if defense cuts and defense spending and federal government spending continues to pull back. Some of the money that we're used to won't be there. But I'll tell you the truth, if we can, even if it means losing some of that revenue in order to get the federal government out of our business, then I say let's just tighten our belts and fight the break, because that's how we got in this mess anyway. But again, the budget's always the focus. It'll be the focus again this time, and we'll deal with it as best we can. I think December 17th, the governor will make his proposals. There's another round of budget cuts coming. Maybe, I don't know if Steve knows more than I do. I don't know anything about what he's thinking about, what he's proposing. He's fairly tight-lipped about things like that. And I guess we'll see. When the other shoe falls, we'll see what we have to deal with. But the news from all quarters seems to be that we can expect some more serious budget cuts that we'll have to deal with in next year biennium. So, but there will be other things to do. I mean, the budget, we can't get so depressed by the budget or by our fiscal situation that we forget we have other things to do that are important to the people of the Commonwealth. And there are still things that they want done, things that need to be done, things that I hope we can do. Most of the legislation that I'm working on right now for the next session is in the education. Again, Steve is the chairman of the education committee, and I'm on that committee, and chair one of the subcommittees. And as you know, last year we made some improvements in SOL reform by eliminating some of those tests. There is I think it's a 40-member commission that's been put together to look at more reforms. I'm amazed that a 40-member commission can put together anything, to be honest with you, but they've actually come up with a couple of really good ideas. So I think we'll continue to address SOL reform, and I think we need to. In the world of public education, this is something that's just, it's not working for us the way that I think it was envisioned, maybe the way that it once did. And there are a lot of other things in public education that need work. And some of the legislation that I propose deals with those. One thing that I have drafted a bill on, and I'm pretty excited about it, even though I know big education is going to have a fit about it, and we're going to get a lot of pushback. But I have drafted a bill that will require, for high school graduation in Virginia, one of the requirements will become passing the national citizenship test. It's the same test. It's the same test that immigrants to this country have to take to become naturalized citizens. I think that's a fair request. I'm sure we're going to hear about, oh no, not another test. Oh no, not more for us to do. But let me tell you about this test. Our opponents, I know going in, will make this sound like the most onerous thing that ever happened. The test is a 10-question test. And there's a bank of 100 or so questions that you study. And then you take the test, and the test is, 10 of those questions are pulled out. And you can take the test orally, you can take it as a written test. And with this bill, you can take it as many times as you need to. But you have to pass it according to the passing standards that are already established in order to graduate from high school. And those standards are not even a passing mark by Virginia education standards. You only have to get 60% to pass this test. Now, if we can't do that, if our high school seniors, juniors and seniors, can't pass a test like that, it's not so much that they don't deserve to finish school, it's that we are failing them miserably with what we're teaching them, what we're trying to educate them. So right now there's a big initiative in the country. Sandra Day O'Connor, former Supreme Court Justice, and Rudy Giuliani are making this big push to have these tests implemented all over the place. I think it's 7 states that have already got initiatives going for next year. And a couple have already implemented. This is serious, and this is how serious it is. There was a study done in both Oklahoma and Arizona where random tests were given. They tested high school seniors, public high school seniors, and they tested immigrants to this country, people who would be taking the naturalization test. The immigrants on the first time test scored 92% average. The high school seniors in those 2 states scored an average of 4%. Not 40, 4%. We have a real serious disconnect, and part of the disconnect is it's not being taught. We tied the hands of teachers in some instances. We do force them to teach to the test, and if this is not one of the tests, then it rarely gets taught. Last year, one of the national tests that are given in civics was dropped because there wasn't time to teach it. Now, I know that world history is important. I know that there are people out there who care about what happened in 5th century Europe. Maybe. And I know that that's information that's available to you if you're interested. But is it more important than knowing the name of the Vice President of the United States if you live in this country? Is it more important than knowing who the Speaker of the House is, or the President of the Senate? Is it more important than knowing how many years a term of Congress is for senators and members of the House of Representatives? I don't think so. So we need to do this differently. We need to fix it, and this is a start in terms of fixing it. Yes, ma'am.
I like very much what you're saying, but on the heels of talking about how we don't have any money, isn't that going to be a lot of money?
Shouldn't cost us anything.
Put in the bureaucracy to administer and grade and file test results?
The test already exists. All the materials already exist. They're available to you right now.
Federal government will just say here, free?
Federal government, we can skirt the federal government to do this. This can be a Virginia standard, and we don't need the federal government. The test already exists. It's already available. You can take it tonight. You can go home and take it online tonight. So I think we can avoid that argument. One other education piece that I have, I guess you are familiar with the OEI, or the Opportunity Education Institute, that was established last year, became known as the School Takeover Bill because we were attempting to do something about these chronically failing schools. Well, the OEIs did. It was found to be unconstitutional, so it's gone away. And I have put in a bill which comes directly from a recommendation made by JLAR, the Joint Legislative Council, and it deals with strengthening the memorandums of understanding between schools and school boards, and it turns this work away from the state takeover over to the State Board of Education. It does contain some of the same elements, and I can assure you that there are going to be the same cases made that this is not constitutional either. So I expect that fight to take place. But the fact is, these underperforming schools, and some of them have been non-accredited or accredited with warning for decades. And those schools are condemning these students. We've had whole generations of kids go through schools that were never accredited. That's simply not acceptable. In a state where we could have one of the best public education systems, should have, and in some cases do have. And my feeling is that schools that consistently fail to meet the standards, I think the state has to find a way to help them. Taking them over, not so much. And I really don't think the state wants to take them over. And I don't think any of us want to see the state take them over. But I do think in a short-term situation, we've got to find ways to help them and turn them around just for the sake of these kids. So that's two of the things I have. I do have, you know that the question of prayer at public events has gone back and forth. It's been a battleground at the local level, not so much at the state level, but at boards of supervisors and council meetings all over the place and all over the country, really. This has been a real battleground. So I've introduced a bill, will be introducing a bill to follow up on the latest Supreme Court decision, which gives clarity to the fact that you can do this. The Supreme Court has said you can do this. There are some guidelines for doing it, but nobody should have to feel like you can't have prayer, even if it's a Christian prayer, to open your meeting. And I've got some support for it from several different quarters. I've had a similar bill before, and it failed. Lawyers always raise the constitutional question about these things. But I think the Supreme Court has, as far as I can tell, pretty much cleared the decks on this thing, that it is constitutional, that you are protected under First Amendment rights to do this. And so we're going to see. We'll take a run at it, and hopefully, hopefully we'll be able to clear it up for a lot of people, so they won't have to always be arguing about it. There are other things that I have that are in the works. It's a short session. It'll probably be pretty intense. A short session with no money probably means there'll be a lot of talking and a lot of bills, and we'll have a lot of things to consider. I'm always amazed. We go every year, whether it's a short session or a long session, and there's somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 pieces of legislation put in. And you know, I've lived in Virginia all my life, and I just don't believe that every year there are 3,000 things wrong with the Code of Virginia that we need to be fixing. And I would love, now this is pie in the sky, but I'd love for us to have a session, an extended session, where you didn't put in anything new. But your responsibility was for each person to find 10 things they could take out. And I'm not naive enough to think we can make that happen in our lifetime, but isn't it a great idea? I mean, that's how we start, I think, to downsize government. So, of course, 2015 is an election year for the entire General Assembly. 100 delegates, 40 Senate seats will all be up. So there'll be a lot of excitement, I'm sure. And hopefully you all will be involved at the grassroots level, because it is